Hey, Scott.
Hi, Vince. Hi, Lorraine.
Hi. And you start late in the Eastern States, Vince. No, it's at 9 p.m., is it?
Yeah,
No.
yeah. I have one at 9 p.m. tonight. Um, one at 7 a.m. on my Monday morning. One at 4 p.m. on Wednesday afternoon, and one at 8 a.m. on Friday. So we try to
Oh,
cover
that.
all the time zones. Yeah, and even then we don't get all the time zones. It's like it's still
No.
really late for some or really early for some. Yeah, but it's an attempt to do that.
Morning, everyone.
Morning.
Morning,
Hey.
Dennis.
It's Saturday morning for you, Dennis.
Yeah, just up, just getting things together. The sun is out after 12 days of grey, so I went out the back just to stand in the sun, say hello.
Yeah, that's hard to imagine. Yeah. So it occurs to me something that came up that Lorraine about what it will be like, what it won't be like, what and it's I think it's pretty important to appreciate that you're not going to lose anything
Mhm.
from waking up. It's really very much a case of having an additional new perspective as a way of looking at things. And all the old stuff is still available, but a whole lot of that will kind of drop off because it's seen as irrelevant.
I
But
can,
that's the crap. Yeah.
yeah, I think, well, just to give others context, so Vince has been on LU. I went on LU and Vince jumped on, so he's been guiding me. And um, I think as I ask more and I see more, of the illusion, that I'm just during the week. And when I was started working with you, I was just presented with these like the biggest fears. The biggest fears are going to come along and grab me by the throat. And the first one that grabbed me during the week was like two really big ones during the week. The first one that grabbed me was, well, it was the fear and the finances and the business and the it was the control. It was a sense of control. What's going to happen if I have no control? And that was a big one. And then the second one that I was asking Vince about because I'd been watching something on YouTube, and I think it was Andy Shanty, and he was saying that he had had some young mums ask him because they're talking about some of them are sharing their stories and they're saying, well, when there's no self, there's no ego, there's no desire, there's no motivation. You're not, you're not there because you never were. So what's the motivation and how was that going to affect being a parent? And it was like, boom, second fear. Am I not going to, if I'm not myself here, am I going to lose I don't know, probably. So that was the recognition of attachment to being a mum, and was I still going to have that love for my child? if I didn't have a sense of self anymore. So that was the second fear that came up during the week. And so yeah, they've been grabbing me, and at the end of both, they were just two major just fear attacks really, but they didn't last long. I managed to get on top of them after, I don't know, an hour or two, with your help. And then there was just deep sobbing of all I can say is surrender. It was like it's a deep belly sobbing, but it was, I can't say this without saying self, but it was like an instinctual handing myself over. I'm done. I don't, I'm just done. So there was, yeah, massive fears and massive sobbing during the week, and now I'm just left with every day. Who am I? What is this? What is this? If I'm not all those things, then what the F am I? And so I'm going between the questioning, the inquiry, and meditation, and catching myself when I get sucked back into the thoughts. It's becoming less and less.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of it's got to do with the expectations and the unknown aspect of those expectations.
Yeah.
But it's important to appreciate that, for example, the control one is a really good one. It's like people go, well, if I haven't got control, does that mean that I'm going to lose control?
Mm.
And what happens if I've got no control anymore? Well, in actual fact, you never had control. The
Mm.
idea that you had control was a delusion.
Yeah.
And the reality is, until you see that, no point in being told that. You've got to see it yourself. When you do see it, you recognize that, hang on, what was happening before? It was everything was happening, and then I was imagining that it happened because I had control. And now I realize that that whole idea of control was something that attached itself after the fact. After whatever happened. It was mind that come along then and said, oh, I did that. When in fact, even without mind, a million things happen. And you just got to watch yourself during the day and you'll see that happening. You didn't even give one thought to the muscles required to sit in that chair or to sit down where you are sitting down. It just happened. Walking across the room to get to where you are to sit down. It just happened. And sure, if you got to the other side of the room and before you sat down, you could turn around and you could look where you came from and you could go, I did that. But the reality is, it just happened. And it's true to say, I did that, but that's a story about the I and doing, and it fits in normal social situations. It's appropriate to say those kind of things and to look at that. But you recognize that it just happened. And as you let go of the story about having control, all of a sudden there's a whole lot of energy freed up that was used before in considering what would happen if I don't do. Why do I need to do? What is it I've got to do? And you plan and you play different scenarios in your mind, and you waste a huge amount of energy doing all of that stuff when those things just happen anyway. So really, it's not a case of losing control. It's not like you go from having control to not having control. It's you go from not having control to realizing you never did have control. And then control is drops off the radar. It's no longer an issue. You don't even think about having control because eventually, maybe not right at the moment, but eventually you'll get to the point where you don't even think about it. It just becomes, okay, look what happened. This happened. And the same thing with your connection with your child is way more complex than you can even imagine. It's more than, I mean, it's simplistic to even say, oh well, it's just a love connection. Love is a huge part of it, but what is love? We don't know. We just know we have these intense feelings, and they vary. There are times when you hate your child because, you know kids being kids do what kids do, and that can be pretty annoying. But at the same time you hate them, you also love them. It's just a really complex relationship that goes on there. And one of the things that will happen as you drop ideas like control, ideas that revolve around, uh, well, they come out of stories, ideas of how I should be and how others will see me and all of those kind of things. They drop off, and they were filters that stopped you expressing what you were really feeling. And so what you find is that without those filters, you experience bigger emotions, more intense emotions, and you're unafraid to express them. Like you once were concerned about, well, what will they think of me if I cry in front of them? Now you don't give a shit. You just cry. And it's spontaneous. Yeah. But these are things that will come to you by experience, not from words. You'll start to see these things. You'll start to see a different perspective about what will happen. All the old stuff is still available to you, and the stuff that you will drop off will be the stuff that's of no use, and the stuff you will keep will be stuff that is use. So when it comes to using your mind to organize your finances or whatever, that's not going to change. In fact, you'll probably be better at that because you won't be making emotional decisions in the same way. But all of those old things that you had, all of those old skills, all of the ability to plan and do those things, when they're useful, they'll still be there.
It's interesting because well, I saw the partner. I think it was just last Sunday, and I went into that panic mode of I've got to raise this amount of money for the business, and I'm going to do this, and this, and I caught it, and I sat with the feeling, and I let it come up, and it's changed things. But then, the week's been, so I relaxed into the day and I relaxed into the week, and there was much more creativity came. And then I was like, oh, look what happens when you just relax into it. And I'm like, well, there's another story.
Great,
You know,
great.
I was
That's a
like,
discovery.
wow. But yeah, it grabbed me. So it's a big grab in the last week.
Yeah. And
And
things
yeah,
will keep coming up, and you'll suddenly go, oh, what's here? Look at this. And you'll just have the ability to look at it from a different perspective than the old way, and you'll see things about it that you never realize. And especially when it comes to how stories interfere with, you'll see them happening, and you'll go, oh, that's not necessary. So I love that you're in this discovery mode. You will surprise yourself almost daily, I'd say. You'll go, oh, look at that. Yeah.
it is feels lighter. Mm. But it's just interesting to watch the sheer amount of stuff that just comes up and keeps coming. I've been doing all this work for a couple of years and it just keeps coming and coming and coming.
Mm.
And coming some more.
Yep. But it does thin out.
Emotional stuff. Mm.
Yeah. You're in the beginning, it's pretty chaotic. You get so much stuff all at once, but it slows down. You get more space between. But it's not linear either. You get periods of not much and then periods of a whole lot as well. And you'll be amazed at how quickly some of it will become normal. You know, for me, I've forgotten what a lot of stuff was like. I've forgotten what it was like to be churned up, obsessively seeking. I know it was there. I remember that it was there, but I can't remember what it felt like. Yeah. Chasing answers. Wow. What an amazing waste of time that was. Yeah. 40 years, 45 years of obsessive seeking, reading everything I could get hold of. I mean, even before YouTube came along, like I'm an old man now, so it was all in books back in those days, and it was pretty new if it turned up on a CD. The stuff on tape, stuff on CD, chasing, looking for. And when it was found, it went, wow, what a waste of time that was. But then it wasn't, it was all
So
every
I was going to say then, see, you don't, I guess that's another self question. So there's no correlation of your years of instinctual drawing for a path and where you're at now.
Oh, of course, there's a correlation. Yeah, I was going to say, it felt for a moment like it was a waste of time, but then the realization that every bit of that was necessary for me to be where I am now, or where I was when it happened. It's like it all played a part. Every single bit of it played a part. None of it did the job by itself. But when it finally happened, was it the culmination of everything? I don't know. I just imagine it was.
Yeah.
That's a better story than the story that I wasted my whole life looking and something happened. Yeah.
And all these questions then become just obsolete. Questions like, was your path laid out for you, or they're just obsolete.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
One of the biggest questions, the craziest questions, but at the same time is, if there's no self there, then who am I or what am I? That's the craziest of all questions, because there's no answer to it. We don't know what are we? Are we anything? Are we something? Who knows? The only thing that is actual, and even this is not really strictly correct. It's not, but in the beginning you can say the only thing that is actual is my current experiencing, and then you realise that wow, even that is an interpretation. It's the way I've been conditioned to look at it, and do I draw meaning from it, or do I just describe the actual experience? And it's really, really difficult to separate those two things. Even when if we try to describe it in what seems to be an objective way, we're still putting meaning to it in the background. There's still stories that hang off stories about it. And somewhere along the way, for me, there was this discovery that I have no idea if I am something or what I am. And the really, really big aspect that came from that was it doesn't matter. I don't care. It's not something that can be defined, because all I have is my current experiencing, and that the same experiencing if I view it from one perspective, becomes something different than if I view it from another perspective. But whatever I become aware of in my experience, it's finished by the time I become aware of it. So rather than try and describe it or give meaning to it, I just go, okay, that what you experience, that letting go, that acceptance, that surrender, I forget the words you used just a few moments ago about that, but that is a huge part for me of not minding. It doesn't, I don't mind whatever turns up, because there's no point in minding, because by the time I'm aware of it, it's done, finished. So certainly any idea of wanting it to be different, well, that's a good definition for insanity, I reckon. Wanting to change something that's finished. So it for me, it triggered something, that the inevitability of it, the fact that it was already done, made it easy for me to accept what turns up. So questions are fine. I don't mind questions, but I don't have a need to find an answer to them, because questions just turn up. Sometimes the desire for an answer also turns up, but that's just like another question. That's okay too. I don't have to look for satisfaction by chasing that down some kind of rabbit hole. It just is what it is, what it is. And I don't really know what it is. I just know my interpretation of it. And most of the time, I couldn't be bothered interpreting it. I couldn't be bothered thinking about it, because it's a waste of time. You can see Marius's mind ticking over there.
No, actually the opposite. I was
All right.
really enjoying a clear moment. I've been um, more frequently fluctuating in and out of like seeing everything as me, for lack of a better term,
Yeah.
which is increasingly peaceful or cozy.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a session with somebody today, and that particular subject came up big time, and boy, it had me bawling my eyes out. I was crying. It's coming back now. I was crying with joy at the amazing something of seeing how everything is me, is like also swimming in the not separate, the not other thing. It was just so beautiful. It was, oh.
Yeah.
When I first, my first big, I suppose you'd call it a breakthrough. I had an epiphany when I was guiding at LU, and I was describing somebody, and I was recognizing that, let's say, the conditions for me to say, have a drink of something. I think, okay, well, if I'm going to have a drink, firstly, the mouth stuff has got to work properly. But then there's this thing here, and it's got stuff to drink in it. In this case, sparkling water. And it's contained in a plastic thing. And then I think, I wonder who made the plastic thing. And I wonder what the process was for the water that got in there. And the people that did that. And then, wait a minute, those people that did that, they wouldn't be there if their parents hadn't been exactly what they were for their whole life up until the point they were born. But hang on, they had parents too. And if I go back far enough, there was some caveman somewhere who had to get enough to eat to stay alive in order to procreate and have their great, whatever, 400 iterations back of their, and you know what? Absolutely nothing is separate. Everything has conditions that it rests on, and every condition that it rests on has its own conditions. And there is absolutely nothing that's happened since the beginning of existence. Oh, hang on. I wonder if there was a time when there was a beginning of existence, or whether it was before that. But absolutely everything had to happen exactly the way it did for me to be able to do this. Any one thing 1,000 generations ago was different. I couldn't do this. It would be different. And that was for me an amazing epiphany about how nothing exists without everything else existing. So in that sense, there was that oneness that was there. There was nothing was independent. Everything was intertwined. Not a single thing existed outside of anything else. And that was my first taste of oneness, that realization there. That was pretty big. But that now seems like nothing compared to the recognition that everything and everybody is me. That's I guess the first one was a bit more intellectual, even though there was a visceral experience that went along with it. But this one is purely visceral. It's just like I just want to cry when I even think about it. It just is everything. It's just so big. Yeah.
There's something really juicy in that, Vince. That whole, how you were describing everything being kind of part of everything, and nothing could be any other way from first human to this moment. And then the mind kind of jumped in and went, yeah, but that's why the ego is the problem. Why is the ego in here? Did some evolution happen that the ego is causing suffering? Then I was like, oh, that's just more, that's part of what you were talking about. Then I'm really looking at, oh, then with this suffering, this suffering that's here right now. And other than saying the words, sensing the body, like suffering is created out of nothing. And it is nothing. There is no suffering. There's just the words, oh, I'm suffering.
I wonder, Denis, that do you really grok what you just said? That suffering is a story about circumstances that is seen from a certain perspective, but the consequences of seeing it from that perspective is where the unpleasantness arises from the story that's associated from that perspective. But the same circumstances seen from a different perspective, and we don't call it suffering, we call it an opportunity, if you like, that says there's something going on here and this is how you can look at it and see it.
Yeah.
Suffering itself doesn't exist for sure, but we tend to label those unpleasant things as suffering. But those unpleasant things are not unpleasant if we see them from a different perspective.
Yeah, right now it feels like they're not unpleasant if you just feel them. Like things are being seen that were solid, like suffering. That's a solid thing. Like I can tell we can spend half an hour here talking about my suffering if you want. But to see it from the angle as you describe life and its interconnectedness, its sameness, that everything has to do everything it does for everything else to appear to happen, like that it's all perfectly moving together. And you're like, but if that's true, like when you look for suffering in the moment, I can't find it. It's like it's just instead of being a solid thing, it's become like sort of steam, or it's just vanishing in terms of a solid thing that I can get hold of and talk about. And then you go quiet, but then the mind just wants to keep coming in with, well, if you weren't suffering, you'd be doing this and you'd be out doing that and you'd be better and you'd be. So the mind is like trying to keep you locked in.
I've been finding that this week, Dennis, just even as I'm walking around, there's this not just a narrative, but a habit narrative that I've been walking around this week, and I hear myself saying, I'm stressed or frustrated, and I stop and I'm like, that's bollocks. Where is that? Like, but where is that coming from? Where is the stress? Where's the frustration? That's just a habitual thought. I'm going to stop. I'm like, I don't even feel any frustration or any stress. It's just my head saying it. It's not even linked to a feeling. And then I'm like, I'm busy. What's busy? Where's busyness? You know, so I'm telling myself I'm feeling all these things and I'm in all these states and I'm bloody not. They're not there. Um, and I just don't know whether to laugh or cry. I just walk about the place like questioning all the stuff that comes up. I'm like, wow. This is just I've been telling myself my whole life I've got a stress problem. Like, where is the stress?
Mm.
You know, it's
But you can imagine that if you believed that
interesting.
story,
Mm.
there would be stress. But it comes from believing the story that there's stress there.
Mm.
So what happened? An amazing thing is that you caught what was happening before the results of it turned up, before the actual suffering or the actual unpleasantness that you would call suffering. You caught it before it turned up, and it didn't turn up because you
Mm.
saw. So this is what we're talking about. That perspective is where you can see things. So this is something that Denis has probably heard before, but frequently you'll hear people say, or you'll hear me say it, after awakening, nothing changes, but everything is different. And that's the difference. You're seeing it from a different perspective. You're catching it before the old results turn up. And they don't turn up. Not because you're saying
Well,
don't come. Sorry, Denis, go.
no, yeah. I was just going to say, it feels. Is it a case that awareness notices more the thoughts, the things that cause us to suffer, that when we don't notice them. So it's like there has to be some sort of a, I'm using words obviously, so it's not exactly correct, but there has to be some sort of a higher level of awareness to catch thoughts, to catch things in the moment, so we're not dragged along by them or go unconscious. That's certain increased level of awareness. I don't know how that
Yeah,
happens.
yeah. I don't want you to reify it or deify it. I don't know the right word, but I don't want you to think in terms of a higher level of awareness. It's not this magical, wonderful thing that the non-dualists talk about as awareness or consciousness that's jumping in. It's not a thing. It's you learning a new skill, probably using a different part of your brain. That's all. So if you took somebody who's always lost in the content of their thoughts and you were able to help them recognize the fact that a thought has turned up and not engage with the content of that thought, all of a sudden things are going to be really different for them. And they might then turn around and say, well, there's something magical happened. But really, they've just learned another skill.
But does it take discipline, commitment?
No, definitely not. That'll take you in the wrong direction. Both discipline and commitment require effort and control. So how are you going to use a delusion to create reality? Well, you're not going to create reality. You're just going to become aware of what is actually there. And
I'm saying that in the context of staying awake.
say that again.
When I said, does it take discipline and commitment? It's sort of like, is there a discipline and commitment in every moment to stay awake?
No, no, you can't. You use that discipline and commitment to stay awake, and I guarantee you within 5 minutes you'll be asleep.
One thing that I would probably highlight is a, a seeming discipline might happen, but that's not anybody who's being disciplined. Like there's actions and thoughts and things that happen, but there is the identification with those that is the delusion that there's somebody doing those things. You understand?
Yeah, yeah. I think the question has just come up from an old memory from listening to Adyashanti over the years, where he talked, and again, this is all rusty, but he talked about being awake and the discipline of the responsibility and moment by moment, because it's not just a done deal, it's a continuous thing. So it came across as you must be disciplined and stay awake, and you can still be a prick if you're awake without being disciplined, and that's what's coming up a story.
You know, it's interesting that you bring this up because I've had I thought about the period I had going into this where I was feeling deceived or pissed off at spiritual teachers. Uh, and but how I see it now is very different. Is that, if you're going to point at these things, you can come at it for so many different angles, and you know, even the identification with awareness can also be helpful. I agree with Vince that don't go there. But for many, it's a helpful, or it seems to be a helpful stepping stone, and a delusion you drop later. But um, yeah, for example, with Adyashanti there, he might just be speaking to somebody who he knows is, you know, an illusion. He's trying to reach. He's trying to rather like really pointing directly. He's trying to give somebody a helpful stepping stone to come a
Yeah,
little bit closer to understanding.
yeah, yeah. And your comment about awareness reminds me of the netty netty. Like, yeah, it's a useful halfway point till you're left with one thing. And I suppose you let go of that one thing and whatever that is for you.
And by somebody telling you exactly what we're doing here many times, is like somebody offering you some new perspective on something, which leads you to take on a new discipline. For example, you start to meditate and you keep a schedule on that and you like really follow it um, through what seems to be discipline. Is just new conditioning kicking in
Yeah,
from a suggestion from outside, or apparently outside from life.
yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that if suddenly one started to meditate every second day, great, whatever. But what's the problem here is the idea, oh, you should be meditating more, you should be doing something. You're not doing anything in between these meetings, like you're just doing less and less all the time. You're really, you're wasting people's time, you're wasting your time. And there's a frustration as the seemingly Dennis character does less and less, and the mind, the ego is going crazy about that. You need this, you need to do that, you need to do this, right? You need to go here, you need to. Last night it was telling me I had skin cancer, so now I need to go to a doctor and have a look at a patch on my skin. So it's just driving me crazy. And the reality is I'm doing less and less and less of anything.
And everything is perfect.
Yeah, oh yeah, the mind would love to argue with that. But yeah, everything has to be perfect. There's no choice. Like to say it's not perfect is like to try to blow up the universe. It's just crazy.
Everything is what it is, as Vince says. Like, it already happened.
Yeah. I could just, my mind says, if I could just get hold of that problem, it's sorted out. Like, it's just, I can't find the actual problem. There's lots of peripheral things, but we haven't got to the root of the problem.
I'm just bursting here. I'm just absolutely bursting. Man, you've got it. You have got it. You just don't know you've got it, but you've got it. God. One of the things, I mean, you would have heard me some time ago say to people, all your thoughts are bullshit. Don't believe any of them. Right? And then the time comes when, yeah, okay, there are some useful thoughts, but you got to. Now I'm going to say something a little bit more, a little bit deeper, and that is, I don't know how to say it. Um, watch for stories about what things mean. They're all bullshit. And so we have a story, and it's like, it's quite clear what the story is, but there's these stories that hang off it, stories that say, oh, that's true or not true, stories that say that means something. They're the ones that get us into trouble. The stories that hang off the other stories that say that story means something. That means that you're not good enough. It means that you've got to find something. That means you've got to do something. They're all those meaningful stories about meaning. They're the ones that get us into trouble.
Yeah, it feels like we let go of a few stories, but not the stories around the stories. Like Lorraine there was talking about during the day walking around realizing the mind saying like I'm stressed, and then how she expresses it to us, and like otherwise we can't have communication. But she's like, hold on a minute, I'm not stressed, and to me I'm watching and going, but is that the second story of the first story? So I'm stressed. Hold on a minute, I'm not stressed. Is that ego slipping in subtly with another story to counteract the first story that was seen?
Yes. Yeah.
And it gives you a little hit of, oh, I see that. Look at that there now. But I know I've just jumped onto another story, but that's not true story. This is the news. So, like, the only response could be just that the bottom falls out or something and it's just a pit where everything just keeps dropping. You say it's stories all the way down. It's bullshit all the way down.
Ah.
Only when I feel like this, sometimes I feel like a little 6-year-old and I just want to go out to the road and start running. Do you remember when you were a kid and you just ran for no fucking reason whatsoever? You were just running around like a lunatic, feeling great.
And give me a puddle to jump in.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And if you jump in properly, you get everyone else wet, not yourself.
Ah, that's brilliant, Dennis. Absolutely brilliant. I'm just bursting here. That's just so good. Yeah. I wonder if you get how good it is.
No, no. There's just well, there's silence, there's stillness, there's for a moment everything's okay. Here, there's a nice story for you.
Yep, yep, yep. And I saw that smile that came on your face then, and that's a big hallmark. When there's humour there, you've got something when there's humour. Yeah.
I always seem to smile on these talks, no matter what's going on. There's something in my body that just loves being here and it just wants to smile. Someone could be talking about something terrible and I'm still smiling because it's just great to be here.
Yeah, I get that. Me too. Yeah.
But what you just said is pretty significant in that, when you see that it's just another story and then another story and then another story, and you just see the futility of all the bullshit, all the stories is just bullshit. So you get bored of them. It loses interest.
Yeah, the hooks go. You don't need to engage. Yeah. They can be there. Who cares if they're there? I'll just not bother to engage with them.
Yeah, that's true. But and not but and every now and then another story will slip in and grab you, and you'll forget. Oh, I was caught by the other story. Like, and you could go for a month, you could go for a week, 3 sessions on here talking about an issue because the story has slipped in that you've missed. And that's what I was talking about, that discipline. But maybe it's a case of you see them when you see them, you miss them when you miss them, and
Exactly, exactly. And you know, when you
I think,
miss them, often you'll see them later,
yeah, yeah,
or
yeah.
not, or not. But you know, if you miss them, you don't know that you've missed them because you missed them. You got no idea that you've missed them, so it doesn't matter. You can't do it wrong. You can't do anything wrong, no matter what happens. It's not wrong.
That thought, I had a real sickening feeling earlier, Vince, when you said, "Oh, the thought I wasted my life at this," and it's just that one really got to me. Like I was like, "Yeah, I do not want to be 70 and looking back, regretting that I wasted so many years on something that I couldn't get, and I was miserable." And I know that that's just a miserable thought right now, but there's such power in those minuscule, miniature, momentary thoughts that you can wish your life away in a moment.
Scott's bursting there. What's happening, Scott? No, you're muted.
I'm just wanting to reach in there and slap him in the face a couple times. Like, wake the fuck up. You know, you're already awake. Just realize. Excuse my language.
Hold on, Scott. Hold on. I'll slap myself for you.
You do it? Are you there?
Harder, harder.
Is that because I just went back into Storyville, Scott? Is it?
All of us were sitting here laughing. Your head was up, looking at the ceiling, and we're all sitting here laughing our butts off. It's funny.
Yeah, here's one that's interesting. You know, taking it seriously is a bit like putting effort and discipline into the whole thing. So
Yeah,
if you take it
sorry,
seriously,
Vince.
you know you're wrong. You know you're going down the wrong road.
Yeah, it comes from an old mechanism of when I was very young to cope that I serious, let's get this done, regimented, you know, make your bed in the morning, just control. There's a very deep rooted sort of sense of
But you see that for what it is, don't you?
if you're gonna get something or do it right. Yeah, I do. And yet it's like it's rooted in an emotion or a sensation in the body.
So there's still a story there that you believe about that stuff. That's a serious matter.
Yeah, yeah. Be serious. Be serious. Form of control.
Mm. But isn't be serious the ultimate joke? Or shouldn't we joke about things like that?
It comes from fear.
Well, we have to be serious about fear. There's nothing funny there, is there?
Fear is only a problem if there's some hope. There's no hope. We're back to laughing again.
Hmm. So every time fear turns up, look around for the saber-toothed tiger. Where is it?
It's like it's a fear of. I was going to say first of all, not being, and I don't mean physically. I mean not being. But then it was like no, it's more a fear of being who you actually are.
Mm-hmm. But that presumes you know what you actually are. Or is it the fear of an unknown?
It feels like you won't care what you say. You'll say anything. You'll upset people. You'll go around the place knocking people over. You'll just be like a total, I don't give a fuck person. And obviously, you know that type of person by seeing that type of person.
Hmm.
Why have I attached to being that type of person or being fearful of being that type of person? I could as well be fearful of someone who just stops talking and sits in a room all day. Yeah, it's the fear of not knowing.
What you just said there sounds like a fear of not being in control.
Yeah, yeah. So back to wanting to control, the need to control.
So how's that working out for you, being in control?
So the answer is it used to be great, but not so much anymore.
Do you see that? I'm not I'm not saying this is how it was or is, but could be that before you used to be happy with your stories, now you're seeing now you're not happy with your stories and you're kind of also see that they're just stories, but you're unwilling to let go even even though you're not happy with your stories and you're suffering, you're holding on to the stories.
Yeah, there's a couple of things going on. That does ring true, all right, but there's something else kind of. I'm trying to get clear on. I don't know if it's sort of body identification or it all seems to come back to wanting to be, healthier, fitter, lighter, more active like you were years ago. And that seemed to all slow down, fall away with this whole process of seeking. A resistance to accept myself for who I am now.
But you don't need to accept self as who the self is now, because the self is constantly changing. So if you accept who you are in this moment, the next moment is different anyways. There's no, or to say it another way, there's no self. There's just, conditioning flowing and reacting to life and constantly updating itself.
It's more accept the body. And I know you can say there's no body.
So if we go back to where you just were a few moments ago, where you saw that all is just stories, that the suffering is just a made up story, and you apply that to this story, is there a problem? Now you're in your head. It's it's not there. Is there a problem right now without thinking about not accepting your body?
This feels very hard right now.
How do you imagine Ajushanti reacted to getting sick? Or how was Nisargadatta, addicted to tobacco, dying of cancer?
I imagine there was an underlying acceptance to everything, regardless of what was happening on the surface. And that they were more. What you're doing here, Vince, you're trying to get me to slip into something. Okay. Yeah. They were more aware of that underlying piece, which gave them a more respite.
Do you think they had something that you don't have? Or do you think it would be more accurate to say they don't have something that you have?
At best, I could say maybe they don't have something that I have.
Right. And that would be?
Stories of suffering.
So gift those stories of suffering to me. Give them to me. You don't need them. Give them to me. I'll take them off you gladly.
was going to say I'll sell them to you. They're very precious to me.
Yeah. Are they bolted on, or are they just in your pocket?
Well, it kind of feels like they make up me. Like they are me. I am them.
Right. Okay. That's big. I would agree with that. They are you. So if you give them up, what happens to Denis? What happens to his self that is made up of those stories? Give them up and, whew,
It's like it feels like I would be raw and exposed to the elements, like a little naked baby.
What if being raw and exposed is life? Like that is reality.
Yeah, yeah. Feels like what I'm seeking for.
Then just let go of the stories, man.
I'll pay you for them. How much do you want?
I'll take a 5% royalty on each one that comes up every time you have the thought. I get 5%.
Look, I'll
I'm
give
not, I'm not stupid, Vince here.
I'll give you 100% royalty on every time they occur to me. You can have 100%. What do you
No,
think?
there's no money in that.
What do you think's going to happen to them when you give them to me?
I'll be back the next day looking to buy them back off you.
Double the price.
Mhm.
I read a interesting story or a perspective the other day that I picked up, which was um, unpleasant or painful emotions is the ego bleeding, and you need to let the ego bleed for it to soften and break. So, in other words, you need to stop feeling the need to protect yourself from feeling uncomfortable and meet life naked and raw.
Yeah.
Well, that's just a story, but I like it because it essentially is what we must do. Stop running from what we perceive as danger. Welcome every part of life.
I conceived once of the story that the self is a kind of a body armor that we wear to protect us.
Yeah.
And if we take off that body armor, oh, what a relief, because it was heavy and claustrophobic. And all of a sudden we feel raw and exposed.
Yeah.
But that's not
Instead of the
moving.
mind saying, how do we take off the body armor? The reality is by feeling the body armor, it
Yes.
comes off.
But you were so close to something there a moment ago that I don't want to let go for the moment. I want you to see that your suffering, your stories of suffering and the experience of suffering is what is keeping Denis alive. Drop them and there's no longer Denis. There's a body with a label, but there is no longer that self that is demanding so much effort to keep it in place. Give away your suffering and you're done. Self is gone. It's the last remaining link you've got to self, that suffering. Now keep it if you want it. I'm not going to drag it off you, but give that suffering away and that's it. Self is gone. No more body armor.
Yeah. Stories. Stories to remove stories, like a thorn to remove a thorn. I'm just seeing a snakes and ladders board where the stories that up the ladder are the ones ego identified, and the other stories are just to make you slide back down to self. But there's no true story, but some stories are more useful than others to
Mm.
orientate you back.
And it's not that the stories stop happening. It's just that we don't engage with a lot of them anymore. They're seen as not useful. Then they become boring and drop off, but we don't dismiss them until that happens.
But I was about to say, but what if you can't drop the stories? Then I noticed, oh, doubt. And then I noticed the doubt thought as well.
Well, see, if you can't drop the stories, it's because you're not focusing on the story, you're focusing on the other stories. And the story that enables you to drop the stories is the story that you can drop the stories. It's the story that you can't drop the stories that's got a hold of you.
It's all just stories, though.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. You see that, don't you? I know you see that. You've said that quite a few times.
It's like you're putting down something that you've used all your life to engage in the world.
Sure.
Or integral. I was going to use a weapon or something, but it's like your feet or your legs. You're putting them down. The immediate reaction or desire is to, well, pick them up again and walk around the earth again,
Mm.
but differently. But another analogy is like going to a restaurant with all your family and friends to have a lovely big celebratory meal and not eating. You're like, what's the point?
There's many points. There's many points. You think going into a restaurant is only about food, but you've gone with your family. That's what a wonderful experience to have the togetherness with your family. Food is only one aspect of it. So to go into the restaurant with your family and not eat and say, there's no point in me being here, misses a whole lot of reality, doesn't it? I mean, it's an amazing restaurant. Good, look at the fixtures. They're amazing. Look at the people. Look at the waiters. All of that's wonderful stuff. And you haven't even thought about food so far.
You're running away with my analogy, Vince. Now, I'll give you another analogy. We all go to the swimming pool and they're all in the swimming pool, swimming together, having fun, splashing around, and you're sitting on the edge because you can't go, because you're not going swimming anymore.
You got your feet in the water, sitting on the edge with your feet in the water. That's a lovely feeling, isn't it? Got the sun on your back. Yeah, that's another nice feeling.
No, it's an indoor swimming pool.
You're enjoying those people having fun. Boy, I love it when they're having fun.
I can't help but think I notice like how you just spin these stories and then you spin another story on top of it and we laugh about it. You laugh about it, and then you say something. You come to like say something like makes us all know that you're awake, and then you start spinning another story. Do you realize like and you know you're spinning a story because you're saying it, and every time you spin one of these stories, you're building another building block of self. Like, oh, here's a story. Let me spin this story, and then you add another brick into the building of self. Like each time you do it, you're just
That's
reinforcing
it.
self.
Yeah, but that's it, Scott. But that was my analogy point. What else is there to do?
You don't have to do anything.
Exactly.
Okay, yeah, I was missing the story because the story was slipping in. Well, I wouldn't come on here and I wouldn't talk and yous wouldn't say anything. And that's another story that slipped by.
You know, at the risk of sounding like a hammer, thinking everything's a nail, like I recognize, like I feel like when I'm listening to you, like I can put myself right in your shoes because I had all these feelings and uh, anyway, to me, it looks like you look exactly like I felt right before I realized that doubt was just a thought, like that, like doubt. As soon as doubt fell away, it was just like, oh, it's doubt. Like to me, like I said, I'm probably a hammer hitting a nail, but to me, it looks like your issue, right? Like you seem like everything is in place, but you just have doubt. You don't believe that you're awake. Really, that's all it is. You just don't believe it. You have a story that you don't believe you're awake, and you can't realize that it's not true. I mean, I don't know how else to put it. I'm not a very good communicator, I guess.
No, no, you're putting it well. I mean, I did say that to Vince a minute ago. I had the thought of something and then I had the doubt thought and I noticed the doubt thought as well. So,
But this is exactly like you're at that swimming pool and you're not swimming, but you've got your feet in the water and you're enjoying all the fact that all these other people are having fun and there's a lot of stuff going on besides swimming. Right? The doubt thought isn't the story that you need to focus on. The story that you that would be advantageous for you to focus on is the story that you believe the doubt thought story, not the doubt story itself. The story that says it's right or true, that you believe that one. That story that you believe it. So it's easy to think that the only thing you can do at a swimming pool is swim. And in the same way, it's easy to think that the doubt story is the issue. It's not. It's the belief in the doubt story that's the issue. And that's another story.
Yeah, and the stories get quieter and less obvious.
It's so when they get less obvious, but you still at some point see them, then it's just about recognizing it as a doubt, and that will kind of set in motion a like a continuous recognition of, oh, that was doubt again. Oh, that was doubt again.
So doubts aren't going to be fixed by thinking about it. The only thing to do with doubt is get bored with it, because it is a boring story. And when you get sufficiently bored with it, you won't engage with it. You're not trying to stop it happening. If it's there, it's there.
Also, I don't know how helpful this is, but I'll say it anyways. Trust that the clarity that you've had is it, and that everything else is doubt.
Everything else.
Everything else that says it's something else than it is doubt.
It's, something that's trying so hard to orientate itself, and it can't.
Can I ask a question from the other side? Like, I don't know if I had these doubt thoughts. Um, so the thought that goes through my head is, I know that I can, but is that fact also a prevention? Because by having the thought that I can is denying that I am.
That you can what?
Like wake up, right? So I've got this thought that says, I know I can. I know it's imminent. You know, it's I know this. Is that also a barrier because in that moment I'm denying that it is now?
Hmm. Yeah. It's the stories hanging off the stories again. So the idea that I can means I'm not,
Mhm.
but you are.
That was a very strong one. I didn't get that until, I'm hearing Denis going from one angle, and then I just realized how firm that belief is in my mind that I know I can. And I'm like, shit.
Yeah.
Is that the barrier?
Beautiful.
Or a barrier? Wow. Mm.
That's good seeing. Ooh, that's very awake of you to see that. Yeah. Thank you, Denis.
Mm.
You might not be awake, but you certainly helped somebody else.
For fuck's sake.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I could definitely wake up, right? So that means I'm not awake. That's the doubt.
Because you're already awake. So believing that you can't, or believing that you can, is still the same.
Yeah, I was putting myself in Lorraine's shoes for a second, um, but after the doubt thought is seen, or the doubt energy is seen, there's nothing left. I'm looking for something else. Is there something else? And there isn't. There's just nowness,
Mm.
sensations.
And you could go looking for something that says, but that's not enough. I'm disappointed. I wanted more. Or you could go, well, that's just another additional thing that's not necessary.
Yeah, I was going to say something feels like something is frantically looking for something, for some orientation in the moment.
Yeah, and you'll find that on the other side of the fence.
And I'm trying to see if that's just a story.
What do you mean by that, Vince? I just felt like that kind of set up a little bit more of seeking from how I heard it.
Mm.
What are you going to find on the other side of the fence?
Well, if it's any consolation, Vince, I completely ignored that. What you said, it didn't even land.
Good. But that you're seeing that there's something that's trying to orient itself is actually pretty good because that's the mechanism, so to speak, that's the grasping that
Yeah, that's it. That's it. It's it's like you've pulled back the curtain from the Wizard of Oz, and there's a little seed or a baby of something trying to gra- grasp and orientate itself back to. Hold on, hold on, don't look here. Hold on.
and getting comfortable with the free fall, with not having to grasp anything is, well, again, it's the mechanism. So like trying to notice whenever time you're trying to grasp something is
It's such a clear. The possibility of putting on another story, like you put on layers of clothes, and this is even a story now, is an attempt to put something back onto it. It'll say whatever it needs to say to get you to believe it, even even that.
can you stay there?
We'll see.
How does it feel to stay in that space?
Bodied. Alert. It's like when the light is so bright, no shadows can get in. Thoughts. Anyway, that's all bullshit on my life.
But you're touching on something profound where this is where I find myself a lot of the times is being more and more in free fall or being a growing comfortableness and trust in complete free fall.
I can already feel thoughts trying to come back in. Like it's, oh yeah, but the old thought, oh yeah, but you're not awake. And then, you see those old thoughts coming in again. That's another thought. It's just layers. It's constantly trying to knock on the door and get back in.
Can you think of anything that makes a thought worthy of letting it in?
That just pointed me straight to the I thought. What's the I thought that could let it in?
So can you think of anything that would make a thought worthy of letting it in?
No, they're all evicted. Contract has expired.
You don't have a choice anyway.
What is an I thought?
It's when Vince said, would you let them in? It set up an I, a separate I that would let them in. And I started looking for the I. But what is an I thought? Like I can say I'm having a cup of tea and there's nothing really in that. But when I say I'm suffering, there seems to be more in that.
A lot of I in all the doubt thoughts.
I doubt that, Finn.
Is there an I when there is no thoughts?
Yeah, it still feels like there's an I when there's no thoughts. It's like it's the last thing to go.
Is it an I thought, or is there just a sense of knowing? And does that have to be an I?
Yeah, there's clear seeing. And the I is an I thought. It's an I. It's part of the whole construct of thinking. It's just very simply says I. That's what it's doing at the minute.
So do you see that the I is only alive because of like a, to use an analogy, like a relay race from one thought to another, giving the next thought the stick, passing it along, and without thought there is no concept of I. And notice that by looking for an I, there is a tendency to construct the I because you're looking in thought.
Yeah, when there's no thought, there's no I thought, and there's no I. And it's like, yeah, it's like that movie analogy when you go to Disney and see each frame is a separate thought. When you spin it, it looks like a movie. So the illusion of I-ness is created with each thought. Yes, it spins up.
Yeah, I like that analogy better. That was better.
But because there's very little thinking right now, it's kind of hard to pinpoint the I. There's a belief that there's an I.
I want
And
to
that's
say
interesting because I was just going to say one more thing about belief. It's like thoughts can be seen, but a belief is like, and I've heard people say beliefs are like thoughts with something else or whatever, but it's like beliefs can be there but not seen. Sorry, Vince, you were going to say something?
yeah, but what you just said was worth staying with for a moment. That was good. What I want to say is no thoughts are I thoughts. That the I part of any thought isn't in the thought, it's in your connection to the thought, in your engagement with the thought. So I want to. I don't want. I want to get away from the idea that we're going to end up with no thoughts. What's actually going to happen is that we'll get away with engaging with thoughts. We won't be doing that anymore. It's the engagement that is the I component, not the thought itself, but the engagement with it. And that's exactly what you said with the belief thing. That belief is the engagement part. It's not inherent in the thought, it hangs off the thought.
What engages with thought?
What about the self-referential thoughts, Vince? Is there no, it would be wrong to say inherent I, but
Yeah,
it sets it up.
yeah. So when I say, is there engagement with the thought at the level of the I saying, I say? It's almost disconnected. It's just obviously just a way of talking, a way of communicating. There's no belief in the I. It's
Yeah, that's true.
But when it's an I thought, that with the I component of that thought is, yes, it's me saying this. It's identification and connection.
I guess I just want to point out the kind of double whammy with the self-referential ones, which is, at least I found it helpful to see how many or notice how many self-referential thoughts there was.
Sure, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And when you do that exercise in LU where you write down a whole lot of self-referential thoughts down one side of the page, and then down the other side you write the same thing but without the I component, and it feels really different. It's amazing the difference in the way it feels. And that breaks the belief that the only way to do it is to say I, me, mine, whatever.
Are you saying there is no I?
Yeah, just a story believed. Oh, are you saying that you're going to go from having an eye to not having an eye? No.
Well, I'm noticing that there's something looking for an I. Now,
Okay,
let's just have
hang
a
on.
look at
Hang
that.
on. Let's reframe that. This is a really important issue, this one, right? You can be accurate and you can say, I'm noticing looking happening for an eye. But it's bullshit to say, I'm noticing something is looking for an eye. That's an assumption that there is something. There is nothing in your experience that says there's a something. All you can say is there is looking. Go and argue with me.
No, I'm trying to get clear on what I'm trying to express, and I'm using what you just said to do it. So there is looking for an I.
Mm-hmm.
So straight away, there's a recognition that, well, then the I isn't the important thing. It's what's looking
No.
is where it.
Where do you get this idea that the what is looking? You made that up. That's another bloody story you come up with. You assume there's a what or a who looking, but there's nothing in your
No, it's
experience to
looking.
give that credibility. That's just a logical conclusion. That's
No,
just
what I'm trying to
a
say is
story.
there's a duality here. There's a looking for an eye, and so it seems it seems more important to notice what's looking as opposed to
Why?
looking for the eye.
Why? That's you. You keep getting caught in that one. That's really got you by the short and curlies, haven't it? That there's got to be something looking. Don't you get that looking can be all there is? Even for an eye
What would get that?
is a story. What do you mean? What would get that?
You just said, can't you see that looking is just
All there is.
who are you talking to?
I'm not talking to anybody. I'm just talking. There's just talking. Here, there's just talking. There, there's just looking. Let's not get lost in assumptions. In experience, there's talking. In experience, there's looking. Nothing else. Even that looking for something is a story. For something is a story. For an eye is a story. But in experience, there is looking.
Yeah, I don't want to go looking for an eye. I could spend 10 years looking for an eye.
Yeah, you'll never find it, of course. You know that.
I think Dennis is asking what is knowing.
Who knows?
Like,
Can that be
yeah,
known? Yeah.
it can't.
No. Look, I'll go as far as to say maybe there is something that that is that is doing the looking, but it's not something you can experience. You can only experience looking. So if we go, well, logic says there's got to be something doing the looking. Well, that's logic. Doesn't have much weight, but all right, let's accept that. Can you know what it is? Is it possible for you to know what's doing the looking? I don't think so. So
This
why
is
go
why
there? What a waste of time to go down that road.
the concept of awareness has, like, it might be helpful at some stage, but at some point we have to discard
Yeah,
that concept as well.
yeah.
Yeah, so looking. There's just looking. At some point, for convenience sake, once we've seen looking, we can put a lid back on it called eye to say I'm looking, but there is no eye looking, but it's just
Mm,
useful for speaking.
yep.
I see what you're saying, Vince.
Thank you. Yeah, Paul would say that the resting place of awareness is looking can be useful temporarily as a way of recognizing that there's no I doing the looking, that something else is. But as soon as we get to that one, it's time to get rid of awareness, because what is awareness? We don't know. We don't know what it is that's actual. We don't have
Yeah.
access to the absolute, and this thing you call you belongs in that realm of the absolute. We have no idea what it is or how it came into existence or whatever. It's a waste of time to even go there. It's a mystery. But you can experience looking. And the moment you go, and this is my cup exercise, the moment you go, who is looking? Looking stops, and you're in your head thinking about some logical conclusion of who is looking. Or even if you go, what am I looking at? Again, that's
Looking
in your head.
looking has connotations of eyes, sets up the whole sensory sort of eyes, hearing, seeing, feeling, tasting.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, so we're not talking about that. Yeah, when we say looking, and it's maybe seeing is a better way to put it because of its
Yeah, because I'm
language.
trying to get clearer on the clarity around
Yeah,
the seeing and looking being. So then the mind goes, okay, well, we've got the looking down. What about the other senses? How does that get clarity? It's not really looking what we're talking about. It's
that's right. Yes, it is. You're right. Yeah, absolutely. And it's the same with the other senses as well. So let me put it another way. There is an experience that you will very clumsily describe as looking or feeling or hearing.
or
Uh,
knowing.
but they're really superficial, simplistic labels that we put on the experience. The experience itself is something really, really deep and much more complex and indescribable. But it is an experience that can be experienced. So when you're seeing, in that cup exercise, when you're looking at the cup and you start off with saying it's a cup, and then you keep looking and you see that it is an object with a shape and a form, and you drop meaning out of it, the concept of that it's a vessel to contain a liquid to drink, and then you're just seeing shape and form and color and texture. And then when you drop those labels, you get really into, wow, what I thought was white is not white. It's a whole lot of colors. It goes from a bright white to a shadow side, and the texture that I thought was smooth has actually got a whole lot of dimples in it, and so on. So you really get lost in this act of what we can't really describe, but we will try and describe it as seeing, because we're using our eyes. But the point of the exercise is that when you're doing that, when you're seeing it at that level, you're really absorbed in what's coming in the eyes, and the details are way too complex for any labels to satisfactorily describe them. The moment you think of who is doing it or what you're looking at, the seeing actually stops, and you're up in your head making up something. So the first questions that they asked me when I went to LU was, is an experiencer experiencing something necessary for experiencing to happen? And it was straight away super obvious to me that experiencing is all there is. Who is
Yeah,
experiencing or what is being experienced are conceptual.
even when we're fast asleep, we're experiencing being fast asleep.
Yeah. And a whole lot of other things. We're experiencing dreams, we're experiencing
Well,
falling over, we're experiencing all sorts of things. Yeah. We're experiencing temperature. We want to pull the blankets over us. We do all these things in our sleep.
And we can go even further and say, you know, is seeing or hearing or smelling happening through the eyes or ears or nose? Or is it happening
Yeah.
in the mind or whatever you want to in experience.
Yeah.
And have you experienced any of the senses while dreaming? Did you have your eyes and nose and ears? Were you smelling and tasting and all of those things from this side of the from the realm, or the dreaming side of the realm?
Yeah,
Or
they're
was
all
it all
happening
mental?
in experiencing.
And when you get into that experience, when you do that, frequently you'll find that several senses will run together. But it's interesting what Marius just said. When you're in a dream and you're smelling something in your dream, I have no doubt that the olfactory part of the brain is working, but it hasn't been stimulated from the outside via the nose. It's the dream side that's stimulated that part of the brain to work. And so it's a real smell that's happening. It's just not caused from the
That
outside.
all feels just like a story, Vince, and it's just experiencing.
Mm. Mm. How have you been, Maya? Listening to us waffle on here?
Having fun. Uh, my guest fell ill, so I'm here, and there is no other place where I would rather be than here. So, funny, when it came to the doer now, I was suddenly so sleepy, and I thought, oh, it's a trigger for me. Me and the doer, that's a story also. But I think somehow, at this moment, the last few days, I'm so tired, mentally tired, and so confused that everything is just floating around me, disconnected sensations, thoughts. I'm not able to think properly. I'm not able to make any decisions. I'm just confused and tired, and I'm allowing everything. I'm not. I don't resist it because there's nothing else I can do. Like this is similar to the situation when I came when I was so I was so uh, energized and oh, a bad sensation, bad thought, oh great, I can work with that. Then there was a time when I was so engrossed in my stories, believing stories and feeling bad. Now I'm again in a place where I can work with everything, see everything. I'm just not so energized. I'm just sitting there. Okay, everything's here. So, not bad. This thing, who's the doer? Where's the I? I think I know that I am a collection of stories, but at the same time, I always make myself a concept of it, like a mental image where there are stories like post-its suspended in the air, and if you take them all away, there will be a void in the shape of me. So I may be high again just out of nothing. But then I thought, okay, this is also a thought. This is just a mental image. I should dismiss it. And here I am. Still not able to dismiss it, but somehow. I just wanted to ask this story with this exercise with the cup. Looking at shapes, if you look at it, then you'll see shades and details you don't see normally. I'm wondering if this is similar to another type of exercise, but it would be auditory. You know, when you repeat a word many times, and then the word loses the meaning. Is this the same? Is it similar?
You could use that. Yes, you could use that. And auditory is it's much easier than visual to get the hang of that. When that word, if you go far enough, you have to keep going. So when that word loses its meaning, it becomes just the sound.
Yeah.
And when it becomes just the sound, you're not thinking about it. You're experiencing the sound.
Sound.
Yeah.
Mm.
So the point of the exercise is really to get you to appreciate what experiencing is and what conceptualization is, the difference between the two. So when you're hearing just the sound of the word, and you do it with music as well, right? You're so engrossed in the sound that you're actually feeling the sound as well as hearing it, right? So the sound you, is vibrating the body almost. One way to put it. You become the sound, and then you ask, who is hearing? And as soon as you do, you stop experiencing the sound because you're up in your head going, oh, I wonder if that's Maja. Who's doing the hearing? It's a conceptual thing. Or if you say, what's the instrument that's playing the sound? Or where is the sound emanating? Again, you stop hearing. You stop the experience of it in order to conceptualize about something. And then if you go back to just the sound, it's everything. There is nothing but the sound. There is no Maja, there is no person, there is just hearing. And hearing is a really limited label for it. In fact, it's something else. Yeah. So it's a way of dramatizing the difference between direct experience and conceptualization. Now, it's not to say that we won't do the conceptualizing anymore. It has a place. It's appropriate in a lot of cases to do that. But when you're hearing the sound like that, or when you're seeing, when the experience of seeing is something that you're totally lost in, that's magical. That's where the magic is. That is without the interference of thought. Thought corrupts our experience all the time when we allow it to take a precedence, and when we recognise that, well, it's just a story, then direct experience is open. We're open for that. It's a magical, beautiful moment.
But you know what? When I mean, we've talked about that 100 times, I guess. When I try to put myself into situation to see things as this is just an experience. This is just seeing something. This is just hearing something. Okay, I do that. I try to put myself into a situation that I perceive it this way. But then I have the feeling like I'm cheating. It's not the real thing. I'm just talking myself into something. I did experience similar things a few times. They come in little moments, but then got lost again. But when I tried to do it, oh, it's not real. It's not real. I'm faking
Mm. What is real? To even consider the question, you can only conceptualize.
it.
If you ask what is actual, it takes you much quicker, much closer to what is real. Because there's only one answer to what is actual. The only thing that is actual is your current experiencing before you apply meaning to it.
Yeah. I know that, but I don't get it.
Mm.
I know it.
Knowing it is a great start. It opens the possibility for the experience to happen, and that will change everything.
But as I said, at this moment, I'm not annoyed. I'm not rushing anything. I'm too confused and too tired. So whatever.
Yes. Yeah. Well,
Either I'll fall back into a bad phase or I'll make a step.
yeah. What comes to mind here is enjoy the confusion, enjoy the chaos.
No,
That can be a direct experience.
no.
And to do that, you need to dismiss the stories about what it means and just fully experience the sensations involved without
I'm
labels,
not
beyond labels. Yes.
not asking a lot
Mm,
the last few days.
yeah.
Not asking anything.
It's easy to imagine that chaos or confusion means something's not right. To put some negative connotation to it.
Mm.
But in fact, it's a wonderful opportunity for you to experience something that can't be defined. Chaos and confusion is beautiful because there is nothing outstanding to grab a hold of because it's chaotic. It's moving and changing and shifting and doing wonderful experience to just experience that. And you can see, you will see in it the stories that have got claws, the grasping for
Mm.
something that we want to call solid or clear or something. And that in itself is a beautiful experience to see that. Nothing ever can be wrong. And everything that presents contains a gem. Could we have clarity without confusion?
No, there wouldn't be any opposition to it, so we wouldn't know.
Hmm.
I'm not complaining. I'm
No,
not complaining.
I'm not hearing you complain. I'm not taking it that way. Yeah.
And I think I at this stage I am capable of working with stuff that comes.
Hmm. That's pretty impressive when you're tired. That's good value.
Maybe more confused. Maybe more confused than tired. So
Hmm. Yeah. And I like to play with this as well, that the juxtaposition of confusion and clarity. Confusion is a thing; it exists in the sense that it is something you experience. Clarity is the absence of that. There's nothing to experience in clarity. It's a way of describing the absence of confusion, but in itself, it's a non-event. It doesn't exist. Yet it's a wonderful feeling. There's no paradox. There is a paradox, but there's no one is not right and one wrong. It's just yeah. But
risking
without
to start.
you go,
Sorry,
no, you go.
risking to start the story now. But I often ask myself, what is there that we don't perceive at all because there is no opposition to it? How many things do we take for granted because there is no opposition, so we cannot see them? Because if something is white on white, you cannot see it.
Mm, perfect. Yes, that's good seeing. Mm, that's a huge part of life.
Must be.
Mm,
You only see things, people don't know that they are healthy until they become sick.
yes, perfect. Yeah.
I'm confused a little bit because I see, like, as you talk about, you were saying clarity and confusion, right? And that clarity is the absence of confusion. So there's really no duality there. But then when we talk in terms of contrast, you can't recognize something unless there's something to contrast it with. That's dead on duality. And I'm not really sure what I'm confused about, other than it's not making sense to me, or
Hmm.
I'm not sure what to make of it. Just
Yeah. So that's an interesting one, and one that was for a while a huge thing for me, with this non-duality and duality. And I will say this to you: non-duality contains duality.
And I think I'm so far away from getting also this non-duality thing, and
Yeah,
I don't even try anything. Just if some days something comes to me to understand it, then it will be it.
it will happen.
Otherwise, at the moment, I'm not able to.
Yeah, duality and non-duality is a conceptual game, not worth effort in it. But the idea of non-separation is an idea until it's experienced. And then it's no longer an idea and can't be spoken about because it's an experience. And no words can do justice to it. So the whole idea of things being dual or non-dual is a waste of effort. Don't bother with it.
Far away from me. I remember Vince, your question from the first time I appeared here. Uh, what 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 is your goal or something? Is it spiritual or psychological? And I said it used to be spiritual, but now it's psychological. So this is what I'm cleaning now here, the hooks, looking for hooks and triggers and
Yes,
how
yeah,
to.
exactly, yeah. And I wouldn't even call it psychological. It could be described that way. I would call it human. Let's
Yeah,
come back to being human, fully human,
yeah.
uncorrupted as possible. And it's not possible to be completely uncorrupted. It's just let's undo a whole lot of the corruption by recognizing it and experience changes. Yeah.
Not that I wouldn't like to know how it is to experience non-duality, and this is what brought me here in the first place, but somehow I accept that I don't get it now.
Yeah. You won't get it
So
with your head, it's not something you can get with your head. It's, as I say, it's a conceptual game. But you have experienced it on several occasions. I've witnessed you, what I would call it, experiencing that. Um, is talk of non-separation or talk of oneness, and you can get closer to an experience that you might describe as non-dual. But yeah, it's a crazy concept. But that experience that I had so strongly today of everyone and everything is me. That's what I would call it. Uh, uh, I cried. I cried. It was just so beautiful, so overwhelmingly beautiful. Yeah. It comes back again when I when I just think of it.
yeah, this is when I didn't think it was this when I'm in the group and then people talk and then I just think, oh, this is what bothers me, and then the other one begins, oh, this is what bothers me, and the third one, and everyone. So
That's it. There, yeah, yes.
okay, this is it.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't. Oh. And today, helpful as always.
Oh. And I wonder how many people in the groups who have that overwhelming feeling of connection with everybody, that really in touch with the authenticity and the vulnerability and all of that, have no idea that they're experiencing oneness, but they are.
That's a good point.
Yeah, yeah. And then sometimes offline, when the thoughts interfere, then I start thinking, am I crazy spilling my beans in front of complete strangers? But they're not strangers, they're me, because they're saying things that are so important to me,
Yeah.
whoever this be.
Hi.
Hello, Helen.
Hi. Can I just say to Maya, is it
Yes.
Maya?
Well,
Maya, sorry. You had a conversation. There was you, Marius, and Vince, and it just blew me away. It was your sincerity. It was your vulnerability. It was just wonderful. I just thought I watched it a few times over. It was just beautiful to hear, and much of, well, everybody speaks out. I'm feeling, the thoughts and everything else. Being human, it is being human. But yes, I have to say thank you. It was just so beautiful, and
love you.
and I love you too. And thank you to Vince. You've had a wonderful, wonderful scene there, which is, I'm sure, everybody would love to see. Everybody is in me, and me. This. How wonderful that you've experienced that, because that's, for me, that would be the ultimate in recognizing.
I wish you could
So
see the beauty in you that I see. You're a beautiful person. You really are.
that's only because you are. You've seen it, and it must just be so wonderful. So I'm so pleased for you. So pleased for you. But I thought you'd seen that years ago. I just That's a presumption. That's a presumption. How wonderful.
It grows. It grows. It gets bigger. Hmm. So how have you been?
Oh, in a fairly rocky place. A lot of catastrophizing. A lot of catastrophizing. But today's calmed me down, and like I say, the mayor conversation was just wonderful. It just brings me back, and just in this conversation that Marius sort of pulled the rug from under me a bit, couple of times, and it sort of takes me, it sort of rocks me backwards out of all this head stuff. But another one today again was words are so, when we use words, and how much heck I'm doing now, just words, they're just not just empty, but they were so reductionist. They reduce things down to as you speak it like cup and everything else, you're reducing it down to just to this concept that's so tight
Yeah,
and
it
there's
becomes
nothing.
meaningless. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's that tightness of what words are, and then when all the gurus are saying, just shut up, just be silent, be quiet, be quiet. That's that's what it's meaning, I think. Stop using words. For a while, but
Hmm.
that's what the silence is. But more words and more words and more words just don't cut it. you
Hmm.
know.
Yeah, they lead us away, don't they?
Yeah, yeah, and that's what thinking is as well. That them words and words and words, and it just
Hmm.
it's sort of realizing just how much it takes you away. Um, and like when people were speaking early on in the meeting, I'm growling away to myself, proper growling, and thinking I've got to go down to my sister's now, a 9 hour journey on the train when I don't feel at my full strength to be with her because she's grieving her son who committed suicide. And I'm thinking, it's all a bit shit. It's all a bit shit. Everything's gone to shit. And people are navel gazing and we're growling away, And, these are hard things to deal with. But then when I settle down a bit, it, you know, it's it's probably all good.
It is all good,
Yeah.
even that really terrible stuff.
Yeah, but to see somebody grieving,
Yeah,
I'm just not looking forward to it. But
yeah. Just watch the closeness that you'll get with your sister over this.
oh yeah, oh that will be there. Yeah, and there'll be just us two, and we'll both be grieving, and I'll be listening, and yeah,
Yep,
and thinking she's going through some tough shit. She has
yep,
been through a lot of tough stuff in her life, a lot of early deaths, and now this, her son's suicide is just hardly too much to bear. But
mm.
I'll sit with her. I'll sit with her.
You'll bring some amazing, wonderful something, tranquility, something to her. You will, just by being yourself.
I hope so. Yeah, I hope so.
You've got so much love. I can see that. I experienced that. You have. And that will affect her.
Yeah. I hope I see she in me and her like you've just seen.
You will, if you look, you will. And I
Mm.
don't mean look with your eyes, but you know what I
Mm.
mean, yeah. Just let it happen. You will. Because her vulnerability in this time will make that a lot easier. It will trigger in you that same unfiltered emotional thing happening, yeah.
It's sort of tragedy brings out something. I'm not quite sure what, and I can't put, but something about tragedy
Mm-hmm.
and the threat of death, and illness, threat of death, and all those things that really dig deep,
Yeah.
really sort of really poke you.
Yep. Absolutely. I'm so thankful for so much shit going on in the world at the moment that that is going to really wake so many people up just because it's so bad that it's good. Yeah.
It feels like everything's like rising to the surface. All the shit's rising to the surface.
Yep. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, I hope people wake up through it,
Or from it. Mm.
from it.
Mm.
So thank you for a wonderful group. It's just a treasure. So yeah, thank you.
It is. Oh, thank you. Yeah. It's great. Well, I think it's my bedtime. Thank
Good night,
you.
everyone. See you. Bye-bye.
By Dennis, by Vince, by Helen, by Maya.
Night,
Ramez,
night.
if you're there, see ya.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
Yeah.